Alright, I have a confession to make. I have never played Dungeons and Dragons. I know, I'm a fraud. I realize this is a writing channel, but they overlap. It feels like half the YouTubers I watch who talk about role building and character creating end up being D&D channels. And here I am, no D&D experience, talking about that stuff and reading books like Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, which isn't explicitly a D&D book, but I've absorbed enough D&D through cultural osmosis to know them when I encounter them. But going into this completely blind, I gotta say, I liked the book. It's slice of life fantasy. It's two of my favorite things. Let's talk about that. Legends and Lattes follows Viv, an orc who wants to quit her life of questing, leave her adventuring party, and open a coffee shop. The book starts with her finishing her last job to collect a Scalbert Stone, and once she has it, she leaves her group and moves to the city of Thune, where she follows the Scalbert Stone to an old stable that she decides to buy and turn into her shop. When she has her shop, she goes out to find a carpenter and meets Cal, a hob, who helps her turn the stable into a proper business. And a lot of this section is explaining the steps Viv and Cal take to renovate the stable, getting supplies, what they take out and remove, and their brainstorming for what the shop should look like. And that sounds monotonous, and it is in a good way. It's immersive and soothing, which makes the book feel engaging and calming. The characters are also really fun. Cal is grumpy and Viv tells it how it is, and they have a really fun dynamic.
He's grumpy.
Once the coffee shop actually resembles a shop, Viv goes out and finds more employees. This is when we get to know her across the street neighbor, Lainey, and when we meet Tandri, a succubus who Viv recruits to be her new barista. And over again, as Viv meets these new people, she has to try and explain her vision and what coffee is. And for a while, no one gets it until Viv's coffee maker actually arrives and everyone else tries some. And that was fun, seeing something so mundane in our world be so foreign to them. And this is also where Tandri shows off how smart she is by suggesting they add milk to the coffee and that they have a soft opening since Viv hasn't put any thought into how she'll get customers. I feel like I just talked a lot without saying anything about the first 8 chapters of the book, but that's part of the appeal. It's slice of life. There's conflict and stuff happens, but it's low stakes. The appeal of the book is seeing the mundanity in this amazing fantasy world. Anyway, back to the story. Viv has her soft opening, and naturally, it's a disaster. No one shows up, so Tandri shows off how smart she is again by suggesting they advertise. She draws up signs that Viv puts out, and they make menus explaining what coffee is. And at first, things don't get much better until they decide to start serving food. They go out and hire Thimble, a little mousy baker who makes just divine pastries, starting with cinnamon rolls. And this was something fun about the book, because they never describe that he makes cinnamon rolls, or chocolate croissants, or cookies. They describe what they are the same way they describe what the different drinks are. And as more people come in for Thimble's baked goods and stay for the coffee, they add more drinks and start getting regular customers. They also get a cat whose name is Amity and who automatically makes the book 70% better, as any cat or cat-adjacent creature does to any story.
Bad cat! Bad cat!
Once the business starts to succeed, it doesn't take long for trouble to find them. The first trouble they come across is when a member of Viv's old crew, Fennis, comes by, wanting to know why Viv left and what secrets she's hiding. And the secret is the Scalbert Stone that's responsible for her success. Luckily, Viv sends him off without any trouble, but shortly after, more trouble appears in the form of the Madrigal, who's essentially the mob of the city. They try to extort Viv, but she's not having any of it, and refuses to give them any money. So Viv now has to deal with the Madrigal, and she's caught between her past and future. She calls up her old crew for advice, wondering if she couldn't use violence to deal with this issue. But Amity is adamant that if Viv does that, she'll be tarnishing the new life she's made. And luckily for Viv, she doesn't have to resort to violence. One night she goes to meet the Madrigal, who is the mob boss, and they just sort of make it work. The Madrigal likes Viv's business and food and decides to leave her alone in the name of getting baked goods. And once the challenge is overcome, Viv's able to breathe and start living her life as an owner to a blossoming business. And this is also where the love story starts forming between her and Tamri. It's a slow burn, and it's difficult for Tamri because of the assumptions people make about her as a succubus and her sordid past because of that, which isn't helped by the fact that one of the Madrigal's goons who was messing with them was her ex. But she starts to open up to Viv, and it's so cute. And the romance is helped moved along by Fennis when he comes back and causes more problems, breaking into the coffee shop to try and get to the Scalvert Stone. And luckily, he doesn't get very far before Amity scares him off, but it does spook Viv and Amity, who points out that Viv needs a life outside the shop in case anything ever happens, so her whole life wouldn't come crumbling down. And this is also leads to Viv and Tamri having sleepovers to try and keep the shop safe. Tamri is really too smart for her own good, because she was right when she told Viv not to make the shop her whole world, because bad stuff does happen. One night Fennis comes back and starts a fire, and Viv manages to save Tamri and the money box and coffee machine, and the cat saves herself, but the actual shop burns to the ground, and Fennis gets away with the stone. And this is devastating for Viv. It's her dream, something she's worked towards for years, turned to ash. So it's hard and she lashes out, but it's not the end of the world, because Viv is a good person who treats people nicely. So while she's off wallowing, her friends come together to rebuild the shop. They get a bigger kitchen for Thimble, make a stage for the musician who's been coming around, and generally make it bigger and better. And Viv also learns more about her scabbard stone, because she doesn't have anything to lose anymore. Why not tell people about it? When she tells one of her regulars about the stone, he explains it's not the stone that brings good luck, but more attracts like-minded people to each other. And unfortunately for Fennis, this means it attracts other cutthroat, nasty people to him. The story ends with Fennis meeting some of the Madrigal's goons, as well as Amity again. And the epilogue tells the mini-story of how Viv discovered coffee in a dwarf city and how she fell in love with it.
She's beautiful coffee, all right.
Overall, I really liked Legends and Lattes. It can be so hard writing a story that doesn't have power creep when it comes to the stakes. The stake creep? Meaning you start out with low stakes, but by the end of it, they're trying to save the world. Especially in fantasy, when you have the entire world at your fingertips. But Legends and Lattes balances its stakes really well. The story was still engaging and relaxing, and even as problems and antagonists arose, it still felt grounded. It was still, for the most part, everyday issues happening in a fantasy world. And it was a breath of fresh air, and it was lovely. And it had a cat! I will say, though, this book had a lot of characters. Viv had a lot of regulars, and they were fun, but they also sort of came and went, making it hard for us to invest in the side characters besides Viv and Tamri. I listened to the audiobook, and there was this one part when we were first introduced to the bard, Pandry, and I got confused because Tandry and Pandry both sound really similar, and it was confusing. And that's a trap of both establishing character personalities and naming conventions. Say your characters' names out loud, and if they sound too similar or look too similar, one of the names needs to be changed or it will confuse readers. And this book fell into that trap.
I'm confused.
It can also be hard writing the monotony in an engaging way. Legends and Lattes did it nicely, but for the most part, readers don't really care about your daily routine of your characters. We care about the day-to-day affairs of the coffee shop because the repetition stuff isn't shown, and the author doesn't bog it down with details. But it is a hard line to walk between soothing and boring. The book also loses points for making me hungry when there was no way for me to go out and get a cookie. Luckily, I can have a cookie now, and I'm going to, and you should go out and read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree.